and welcome. I'm Wendy Greenfield, Executive Director of Mainline School Night, and it's my pleasure to be here with you today. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, Mainline School Night is a local nonprofit organization that's been providing affordable classes and programs on a huge number of topics and disciplines for the last 84 years. With nearly 1,000 classes to choose from, pretty much anything you want to learn, you can learn from Mainline School Night, whether it be a language such as Spanish, French, we have many, many languages, fitness, bridge, art history, current affairs, cooking, music. I could go on and on. We have a class for you. We also offer classes throughout the day and evening and on many weekends as well. So you can meet up online with friends, family, instructors, pretty much any time throughout the day. We currently offer most of our classes on Zoom during the pandemic and look forward to reopening our home at the Kreuzberg Center in Harford Park, Radnor, when it's safe to do so. We also offer many in-person outdoor classes such as hiking, as well as classes on our wraparound porch. This spring, we have 439 classes through August for you to choose from. Many of you received the printed catalog in the mail. If you haven't, visit us at www.mainlineschoolnight.org to download and peruse the online catalog. And you can also sign up for classes online as well. And now I'm excited to introduce today's instructors who are teaching classes this spring. We will give you a sample today of 3 instructors that are teaching for Mainline School Night. We're here today with our first guest, Dr. Kent Bottles. Hi, Kent, and welcome. It's good to see you again, and thank you so much for joining us today. You have such a fascinating background. It would be great if we'd start off if you tell us a little bit about your career and how you ended up in population health.
Great. It's great to be here, Wendy. I'm a trained pathologist, so I'm a physician, did training in pathology and spent quite a bit of time as an academic pathologist, was chair of a department, and then had a variety of different jobs. I was chief medical officer for a large integrated delivery system in the Midwest. I was chief knowledge officer for a genomic startup company, and I ran a interdisciplinary evidence-based medicine consortium in Minneapolis for several years. And I got interested in population health because I think everybody that deals with the healthcare system thinks it's broken. And I think population health is a way to really look at some of the causes of our problems in healthcare. It's actually pretty famous across the river in Camden, where they found out that looking at housing and nutrition and spiritual needs of patients really was a way to prevent diseases as opposed to just dealing with diseases once they occur.
You have 2 classes coming up, teaching them in the spring for Mainline School Night. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the first class, Spinoza's God, Science and Meaning in Postmodern Society?
Sure, I'd be happy to. This is actually an interesting class for me because it's really part of my own spiritual journey to try to figure out how can you be both a scientist and believe in reason and have some kind of connection to the divine or the eternal or God or whatever you want to call it. And I read in the New York Times Magazine the other day an interview with Yo-Yo Ma, the famous cellist. And he was talking about that when he looks up at the night sky, he always wonders about, well, what's the place of man? What's my role in the universe? Am I really connected to God? And I think that's kind of what drew me to Spinoza. Spinoza was a 17th century Dutch philosopher. He actually was born of Jewish parents who had to immigrate from Portugal because of the Inquisition. And he inherited his father's business as a merchant in Amsterdam. They were rather well off. And when he was 23, he just realized he wasn't very happy being a merchant in Amsterdam and wanted to devote his life to figuring out how he could be happy. And it turned out that he got excommunicated from his Jewish synagogue. He then quit his job in the family business, and he made a living grinding lenses. That's when microscopes and telescopes were first coming into being, and developed a very controversial thing that the Torah was not the written word of God, and that God really is nature and the world that we're in here now. And I guess why I was drawn to him as both someone who has been a physician and a scientist, that when Einstein was asked if he believed in God, he always said, I believe in Spinoza's God. So the class will be really my own spiritual journey, going sort of from atheist to agnostic to believing in Spinoza's God. So I hope that it'll be quite interesting for anybody who has issues with believing in miracles and whether the Bible is the actual word of God. And the other, I guess, interesting thing is some people think of Spinoza as the first secular Jew. Back in those days, there wasn't Reform and conservative Judaism. There was just Orthodox Judaism. So for a lot of reasons, I think he resonates today.
That's really interesting. So the news media seems to focus pretty much exclusively on science today and very little on God or the divine. And I was wondering why it's so difficult to reconcile science and the divine. Why do you think it is?
Well, I think in some ways they're put up as kind of opponents. If you think about Richard Dawkins and other people, maybe Sam Harris, who are quite vigorously atheists and want you to believe that all there is selfish genes that want to replicate themselves. And I think even giving this class, I was a little reluctant to talk about my own spiritual journey, which sounds a little arrogant in a way, but my own grappling with how can you be a scientist, but also want to be connected to the eternal, if you will.
It's really fascinating and brave, I think, for you to share that in your class. So you're also teaching a second class for us this spring semester, the human microbiome and your health. And I was hoping that you could tell us a little bit about that class.
Well, this is a repeat performance because I already taught it once at Mainline School Night. I've taught a bunch of classes in behavioral economics, in origins of life on Earth, on the science of sleep. But the microbiome is fascinating because when I went to medical school and graduated in 1980, no one ever heard of it. But now we know that we coexist with, I'm about a 200-pound, 69-year-old white male. About 5 pounds of my weight are bacteria and viruses. Wow. And so it turns out that we have 500 times more genes that are bacterial genes than our human genes. And that the bugs that are in our nose, that are in our gut, actually play a huge role that is really underappreciated in both health and wellness. It has to do with the brain development. It has to do with protecting you from other pathogens. Obviously, that the gut bacteria is different in every person. And it's quite different if you're a hunter-gatherer versus a pathologist on the main line of Philadelphia. So microbiome research is fascinating. It's cutting edge. And it's really in its infancy. As I said, when I went to medical school, there were no classes in it at all. And now we know that it's really doing things that are quite revolutionary. And we'll even talk a little bit about something that is kind of gruesome, which is fecal transplants, which are used to actually cure one very difficult and dangerous infectious disease.
Wow, who would know? It sounds fascinating. So I just wanted to talk briefly about one other thing. So we are introducing a new category of classes called currents, which are classes that focus on topical areas that are of great interest. And we're offering them free of charge as a community service. And we're really grateful to you for launching the first one on COVID-19. And I know so many people are interested in an update on COVID-19. And very interested in vaccines, herd immunity, all of those things. You can't listen to the news today and not hear about it. And we're also personally affected by it, with people feeling very locked down and missing their friends and family and being able to hug them. I know I am. So I know that's a lot, but I was wondering just briefly if you might be able to give us a little update on COVID-19. And then I know that people are particularly interested in vaccines, and there's different kinds. Could you just give us a little bit of information that might help people out?
Yeah, I'm very excited about giving the talk on Monday night. And we'll cover vaccines, we'll cover the variants that are in the news today, the UK variant, the South African variant, the Brazilian variant. We'll talk about when's the light at the end of the tunnel. And my big advice about vaccines is if you can get any of them that are approved, get it. It's not like you need to shop around and think about, do I want the Moderna one or the Pfizer one, or hopefully the J&J one will come on board soon. But just get any vaccine that you can get, because what they do is, even if you get COVID after you've been vaccinated, one, you're helping to achieve herd immunity and end the pandemic. And two, pretty much you're assured then that you're not going to die of COVID, which is kind of a nice thing to think about. So I'm excited to talk about masks, and we'll talk about maybe the end of the pandemic, and we'll talk about ventilation and also schools. Should schools be reopened? So I'm very excited. I've given several COVID updates for a number of organizations, and I'm pleased to do it with Mainline School Night.
That's great, Ken. Thank you so much, and thank you for joining us today. I'm so interested, and I know many people will be in all of these topics and know very little about a few of them. So I'd like to take your class as well. And for the viewers, if you want to sign up for one of Ken's classes, you can go online to our website at www.mainlineschoolnight.org. So Ken, thank you so much again for joining us.
My pleasure.
Let's welcome our second guest, Nancy Frankel Halbert. Welcome, Nancy. It's great to see you again.
Thank you. It's great to see you too.
So you have a fascinating background, having started in modern dance and choreography before becoming an artist. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and why you made this switch into art when you were in your 30s?
Well, dancing every day is very challenging, keeping your body healthy. And I fortunately met someone, and I got married, and I ended up having children, and I just couldn't do the demand of the dancer's life anymore. Mm-hmm. I was also the director of the Community Education Center at the CEC in West Philly, and I conducted so many programs there, and we had performances and classes, and it was just too much, you know. So I had to exit, and when I exit, I leave, and I didn't go back to dance, and when I had so much creative energy, I didn't know what to do with it all. I ended up taking art classes, and that my energy, my kinetic energy, transferred over to art. And I signed up for drawing, and next thing I know, I'm in painting class, and then I'm in a sculpture class, and then I ended up getting my master's in teaching art at the University of the Arts, because I got so enthralled with making art, and I just wanted to teach. I felt really strongly about that.
So thank you. And we're so fortunate to have had you teach so many classes for us for such a long time. You're very, very popular.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I know you're teaching, well, you were teaching 2 classes, and you've just added a 3rd class, which wasn't in the catalog. So this spring. So perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your classes, maybe starting with the one that's occurring first, Guided Open Studio, with a focus on essentials.
Of course. So the students need time to work on their paintings, doing some finished work that they might not have gotten to complete during a class time, you know, because of a typical class like watercolor or drawing pastel. So, or painting. And so we decided, well, let's have a guided studio course where they can bring their paintings in and have more time for discussion with other students. I bring in quite a bit of art to look at, and quotes and give them a motivation to finish their coursework and to share.
That's great. And then your second class, The Secrets of Watercolor Painting?
The watercolor class has been for beginners, and I don't like using beginning intermediate words. I like that if you're just starting out, you would take the first class, which is called a beginning watercolor. Secrets to watercolor are really secrets because people are afraid to do watercolor because if they make a mark, they think it's going to stay forever, and they've been told stuff about that it's difficult to do watercolor. So I try to break that by saying, oh, it's secrets. You'll learn a secret and you'll get past that and learn to enjoy watercolor without the hesitancy. So that class is very popular, and I'm really happy with the students who continue to take it.
That's great. And then I understand from our previous conversation that you're teaching pastels by demand, that some of your students have really been yearning to take a pastels class from you.
What's great about mainline school night is that people are beginners and they come and they really start to enjoy one program, and they just want to keep going and going because the teachers are so wonderful. I have to say, everybody I've met and I think are fantastic. And the pastel class is very popular.
So you also speak about your teaching as an integral part of your art making process as an artist. So maybe you could talk for a little bit about how the mainline school night classes reflect this process.
Well, I really, really enjoy art history, and I have taught lectures at the school, and I'm more of a modernist and, impressionistic forward contemporary artist, and my work is contemporary. My figurative and landscapes reflect more the impressionistic, expressionistic point of view. And so I think that my teaching, the people we bounce ideas off each other in my classes, and I share a lot of art history, and that makes people want to learn more. The more education I can possibly give to people, and then they give it back to me with their thoughts about art, Morandi, Cezanne, and they are introduced to artists they never ever heard of. And this is something that really translates into my own paintings.
That's great. And then one last question. You teach and work in several different media. How do you come to learn so many types, and which do you prefer teaching?
Well, I learned so many media because I'm a teacher that helps people who have never painted, or done art before, because I started after a career of arts administration and dancing, and I never made a mark before I was 40 years old. So I am someone who can relate. And I feel like I feel like there's a connection through art and a positivity. And that's what my artwork shows at Cerulean Arts Gallery as well, that there is a positive way of getting past bad things and that have happened or are happening in the world. And artists reflect that.
That's great. Well, Nancy, thank you so much. You're performing such an incredible service, especially at this time when people, I think, are feeling very sequestered and disconnected. The community of students that you bring together, even on Zoom, I think, really is enriching so many people's lives and giving people a way to continue to grow and learn, even from their own homes. So thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you. I just didn't answer the one question, which is my favorite medium. And I have to say it's pastels because I love the immediacy of it. And that's why we're hoping for another course.
That's great to know. Nancy, thank you so much. And now let's welcome our third and final guest, Charo Evangelista. Hello, my friend, and welcome.
Hi, Wendy. So nice to see you. It's been a while since the last time we saw each other in person.
Virtual hugs.
Exactly. And I have to say right off the bat that this is my first interview ever, and I was very nervous. So I was doing my breathing exercises right before the class, which are very, very helpful. I teach people how to deal with anxiety and stress, and now it was my turn to learn how to do that to myself. So I'm in a calm state, hopefully.
Well, good for you. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about that later on. I think especially during this time of the pandemic where people have been isolated and feeling very stressed out by what's going on in the world, the things that you teach for mainline school night especially would come in just so handy and be so comforting to people. So we're going to get into that in just a little while. But first, you've taught so many classes for us and you've been a yoga teacher for a long time. I'd love to hear how you got into yoga and a little bit about your background. And you've also added many other things like the eccentrics class. So I'd like to hear about, your trajectory through life and how you're always learning and growing yourself, which is really what we do at Mainline School Night.
Yes. So I'm originally from Peru. I was born in Lima. And I came to the States when I was 17 to go to college. I stayed longer than I was supposed to stay because of life situations. And I worked in advertising for 25 years in New York. And after that, I moved to Pennsylvania to get married and start a different life. But life had a surprise for me. And nothing that was planned happened. And I went on a spiral. How you plan your life and you think everything is going to work out this way. But, it was like somebody pulled a rug under my feet and I went down. And so I guess during my advertising years, you don't have time to focus on yourself. You're more into what the client wants and you kind of forget of who you are. So when I was in Pennsylvania, that was 95, 96. I was going through this very difficult time and yoga was a lifeline. I didn't know what yoga was at all. And I was working out at the gym and across from the gym there was a center and I happened to go there about one day and I asked the director, I said, what do you guys do? And she said, yoga. And I'm like, what is that? I had never heard of it. And she said, well, why don't you try a class and find out for yourself? And that was in 96. I was the Sama Center at the time. And so I walked in and I tried the class and I didn't know how I felt about it. But all I could say was that at the end of the class, I felt better. And I kept coming every week, one time a week. And I'm in love with my teacher because I was learning that all of my physical problems stem from having withheld my emotions and never addressed them. So all the physical problems were a situation caused by that. So in every class, there were emotions being released. And I was scared because I never allowed myself that. So my teacher would explain what was happening and what, not to be afraid. So 2 years into that, I felt like a new person. All my physical problems disappeared. I was emotionally and mentally healthy. So my thought was, I love to teach children. So I became a yoga instructor for kids, and I taught kids in different ages from 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then I moved to teens because teens wanted their own class, and then eventually ended up teaching adults. In 2000, I was trained and certified as a yoga instructor officially for adults. Number one, not knowing what yoga was, for me, ended up being a tool to be able to reconnect with myself and discover what my feelings were and deal with my feelings and how it helped me heal emotionally and mentally. So the time came when I wanted to share this practice with everybody. And having at the time I'm a very practical person. So what I took was the practical knowledge of yoga. How do I implement yoga in my daily life? as a beginner teacher, a lot of people were afraid of yoga because they felt like they had to be a certain way. Like I said, I took the practical and I said, okay, if we have a back problem, this is what you do. If you have a depression, this is what you do. So in class, it became an education. So, more than that, I developed those classes that you're talking about based on how do I use yoga as in this concept, eye yoga, chair yoga, eye yoga, how to teach my eye muscles to relax so that I can have a good vision. Yoga, power up your brain. How do I do yoga to improve my my memory, mental focus, oxygenate my brain, bring more circulation to the brain? So mudras is another form of yoga for the hands, where you can learn how to, in your body, the same as the earth, we have the 5 elements. When the 5 elements in your body are in balance, you're healthy. So the key is the fingers. So I teach them how to use the fingers to balance their elements and experience health. And some of these in class are like experience immediately changes in their body. So that's all yoga based. And then moving into eccentric aging backwards, I discovered that in 2016, it's a practice also based on yoga, but also incorporates Tai Chi, ballet, and physiotherapy. So it's a slow workshop, it's a low workout, full body workout, where you help your body rejuvenate, get rid of pain, and feel like you just move back the clock 10 years back, and you feel much younger, more energized, doesn't matter how old you are. And it felt the right thing to do because a lot of my students are only 70, 80-year-olds. So coming up and down like yoga practice, it's an issue for them. So this class is more of a slow flow movement, and the music is a big part of it because it's fun music. So it is pretty amazing. And the students are really, some of my students have been with me for 10, 15 years, it amazes me. They're very religious about their practice. And if somebody wants to join the class, the one thing I always say is consistency. Even if you take one class a week, take 10, 15 minutes a day and use some of that you've learned that week and use it. And in a few weeks, you'll notice your body changing, your attitude changes, and everything in your life, you're looking at life in a different way. So I'm very grateful to you guys because since 2003, I have to give credit to Carolyn Cuthbert because she is the one that pushed me to create the mini workshops. So now we have a long list of programs. So thanks to her, that always encourages me to be more creative in how do I approach and how do I incorporate the classes and create new things for people to come to.
Charo, I would love to talk to you more about this. As you know, I love yoga myself, and I got into it pretty much the same way that you described. And I worked in advertising in New York for a long time before I came to Mainline School Night. So anyway, thank you so much. Thank you for everything you do, how much you give to all of us on a daily basis, and love to get into this conversation more deeply at another time, but I'm afraid that we're out of time now. So thank you so much. Be well, my friend.
You are so welcome, and thank you. And I hope we can see each other again pretty soon when everybody's safe, of course.
I hope so too. So for those of you who are listening, if you'd like to sign up for one of Charo's classes or any of our other classes at Mainline School Night, please visit our website at mainlineschoolnight.org. And you've probably gotten a catalog in the mail. And if you haven't, you can download the catalog right from the site and register right there. Thank you for joining us today for a taste of some of the exciting classes Mainline School Night is offering this spring. To explore our 439 classes, visit us at www.mainlineschoolnight.org. And if you'd like some guidance in course selection, contact us at info@mainlineschoolnight.org, and one of our knowledgeable staff members will get back to you. I hope you'll join us next month for another group of instructors and highlights from their classes and programs. Until then, be well.